I'm Dave Generette. I work with the Erie County Office of Mental Health and Intellectual Disabilities up in Erie. I'm a mental health team leader there.
And I'm Julie DeAngie, and I volunteer and I serve on various committees, Quality Management Committee and Health Choices Advisory Committee. I co-chair the State Board, Family Advisory Board, Toolkit Committee, and Building Bridges, and I just do everything I can to advocate for my son's needs. That's Matt.
I'm Matt Katera. I'm a consumer and a member of the Systems of Care County Leadership Team in Erie, Pennsylvania. I just am here to provide my perspective on anything to do with this and how I think it's a good platform to help everything with integration of our systems.
My name is Brian Nottingham. I work for the Office of Children and Youth. My background is largely in research. I do a lot of evaluation of program outcomes and data collection and things of that nature for the agency.
Hello, my name is Daniel Pushik. I am the database analyst for the Erie County Department of Human Services, Mental Health. I do pretty much most of the back-end stuff for the databases, the cleaning, the organization, the sorting, all that stuff.
Hi, I'm Shelby Carnes. I'm the operations specialist for the Erie County, the Office of Mental Health and Intellectual Disabilities. I kind of work with the data more towards the end of the cycle, doing like front end display and some analysis.
So that's our 6-person team. Some things that I want to kind of stress at the beginning here is we will be speaking of a concept known as the fiscal year, and some of you may not know the boundaries and what a fiscal year is. Most of you might, but for the record, the fiscal year we'll be speaking of is the same as the state year and also our county fiscal year. It begins July 1. It's the 12-month period of time between July 1, for example, of this year, 2014, and runs for the next 12 months through June 30th of the following year, that being just of 2015. The year of data that we'll be showing you, or I'll be referencing in my profile information of Erie County, is fiscal year 2012 through 2013. We will, however, be using rather real-time data here based on claims, and Shelby will be giving a little more definition of that. But for the most part, this is as real as it gets for claims that have been paid in Erie County. By the way, another little background on us: we are, of course, a managed care county. Our first managed care partner was Value, and then on July 1st of 2011, we began contracted partnership with Community Care Behavioral Health out of Pittsburgh. Third, something I'm just telling myself, so I hear myself, and I'm reminding our team here, is we're going to try our darndest not to use acronyms and explain what we're talking about. I hope folks remember to explain MCI number, MCI index, master client index is an MCI. We'll be referencing that a lot. Let's see. The last thing I want to kind of point out here is that this is a beginning. We're on first base, we believe. We think we're on first base, but we've got 3 more bases to make the home run here, and that's probably 2 years down the road, 3. We've got, there's steps along the way, and we'll be referencing the others. I think you'll have a good idea when you leave here today just where we're at, but we're not going to be able to share any information about the set of databases on the right-hand side of the screen up here. We have yet to add in information about juvenile justice services. We have yet to add in information about homeless system of care. Third is the intellectual disabilities or mental retardation data set of information that we have available in Erie County. We have some of child welfare information in Erie County. We use the CAPS system. I forget what CAPS, so Academy, forget what CAPS stands for, but In Erie County, like about 20 some other counties in Pennsylvania, the CAP system is in use. We've got some of that data in, independent living data and so forth. Brian will give more specificity to that. And we also do not have the base-funded drug and alcohol information as well. However, we do have the Health Choices Medical Assistance funded drug and alcohol information. All the databases to the left up there, Health Choices, Early Intervention, base-funded mental health, some child welfare, and pharmacy, both behavioral and physical health pharmacy information paid by medical assistants is in the screens that you'll be seeing here today. That has been integrated into our database. So this is first base. This is the rest of the home run here on the right until we get it all kind of drafted in. I speak in metaphors a lot, so there you go. A little bit about Erie County. We are a county of about 281,000 persons according to the 2010 data. In the county of Erie, the county seat is the city of Erie. It's located on beautiful Lake Erie. Get in the car, drive 4 hours and 45 minutes, and you're to Erie if you're living in Harrisburg. It's about 299 miles, and you get to listen to a lot of radio whenever you drive back and forth. It's quite a distance. In the city of Erie, in the 2010 data, we had about 102,000 individuals living in the city of Erie. So of that 281,000 population, 102,000 of them live in the city of Erie. That's pretty much 40% of the population is in a pretty urban setting. Doesn't take long to get into the rural area of Erie County. About 5-6 miles will get you there, driving in the other direction. 12% of the citizens of Erie County are a member of a minority. Going a little further into the silos, the systems that we're used to here, I did do a little research and found out that during fiscal year 12-13, our health choices and our mental health base dollars served about 6,000 unduplicated children under the age of 18, and another 14,000, adults were served using health choices and base funded dollars. And we'll be able to, Shelby will be showing you some unduplicated counts here later, some dollars expended and so forth along those lines. In the Office of Children and Youth world, we in 12-13 had 4,300 children had been evaluated for abuse or neglect by the intake department. Those 4,300 kids were from 2,000 families. In the ongoing zone of child welfare, there were about 1,600 children who received ongoing services during fiscal year 12-13. And those 1,600 children were from about 700 families. Erie County still struggles with placement as a needed remedy in order to keep children safe from time to time. The lengths of stay have decreased significantly in the last 5 to 10 years. But all that being said, there were about 500 kids who needed some time in an out-of-home care placement during fiscal year 12-13. Of those 1,600 kids who received ongoing services. Switching over to juvenile probation, there were about 1,200 kids who received services through the juvenile probation office in Erie County. 200 of those kids received or required some type of a community-based level of care, and another 200 required an institutional level of care. Switching back to child welfare, in Erie County on any given day during that period of time, there were about 1,100 kids who needed to have some level of subsidized adoption, and then another 100 kids who required or had made arrangements with a subsidized permanent legal custodianship, another kind of cousin of adoption, if you would. That kind of gives the profile of Erie County and our human services system. What brought us here? And I'm just going to share like three kind of events that kind of happened at one time in Erie County that have mirrored the time that we've been at this project. And about 2-3 years ago, a report was received from our managed care organization, Community Care Behavioral Health, that spoke to the pharmacy needs of kids who are in residential treatment facility care. And we, of course, receiving that report, scratched our heads and said, boy, that seems high. And some of the leadership said, Dave, you know, and the data people, can you look into this and validate whether they've got this right or wrong? So it was kind of like, forgive the sexism here, but it was the men's team that kind of got together, 5 of us in the fishbowl, and talked about how we could kind of, you know, work our very isolated, individualized databases and kind of ferret out what's the truth of this report or not. We could get closer to that report. I think we could probably even, yeah, we could figure that out today, but it kind of got set on the table because we found ourselves saying, gee, we can marry together some child welfare data and some of the health choices and mental health base funded data that, you know, that we have here. Shelby will talk about how that all eventualized in the beginning, relying on iDashboard's software. But around that same time, we were also putting the gas feed to the system of care project. That's to say that we had received we were one of the 5 counties that had received a $200,000 grant across the Commonwealth, and we were putting that into gear. Most notably, we were putting together our county leadership team. I'm proud to say that we've been meeting with county leadership team meetings on a monthly basis for the last year and a half. Richard Gold serves as our facilitator. He's been some remarkable glue and helped us make some right decisions. It's been a slow process. We're now in our 2nd recruiting phase of youth and families to serve on the county leadership team. We've had 2 steadfast parents who have come to just about every one of those 18 meetings that we've convened so far. Matt's been a very frequent flyer present at those meetings, and another young lady by the name of Jennifer Mitchell, who was fortunately hired as our first youth engagement specialist in Erie County. She's employed by the Achievement Center up there. She's here today and very integrally involved in the System of Care's state leadership program. So we had the county leadership going on. We had this little report over here at Community Care and Behavioral Health that we wanted to validate. And around those same time, Shelby came on board and was getting much more familiar with, you know, the relationship between health choices data and mental health base funded data. And that just like led one thing to another, to the point that we were able to marry together these 5 databases on the left-hand column over here. I went through those earlier. That having been said, we're here today. We've got 3 more bases to run, as I mentioned earlier, 2 more years down the road. Our next big step is to figure out how we can talk to the proprietary owners or contracted entities of these databases on the right. Forgive the expressions, but like Pyxis and CAPS and STARS is the drug and alcohol program and so forth, and just see how we can meld that raw data into what we're already doing. That having been said, these folks aren't going to talk as long as I just did, but I just want to give you a good profile of what Erie County was about, what brought us here. At this point, I'm going to turn the mic over to Julie DeAngie, and let's hear what she has to hear from a parent's perspective. Julie?
No, not nearly as long as he spoke. I started out learning what documentation and how important it was when my son presented with symptoms very early on. He was only 3. He's 21 now, and we've come a long way. I learned documenting behaviors was very important in order to achieve the goals of getting services in place for him. I am very pleased with what they're doing here with the databases and merging all the information, because for many years, that's what I did with my son's information, because I wanted to make sense of everything, and I just created all these little databases with all the lists of his medications. He went through so many changes and so many doctors and so many medications, so many therapeutic approaches and teams and hospitalizations, And services, I mean, his list of services is very extensive. He had 9 hospitalizations. And my head was just like filled with all of this information, and every time we went to a new provider, I had to present all the same information. So I started writing everything down and keeping track of everything, and it was just impossible to keep it all in my head. And you know, thank God this is happening, because it will help so many people who are trying to make sense of everything going on and trying to achieve services for their children, and having to keep it all in their head is just completely impossible. And along with, like, he'd be assessed by different people, and whenever we get together to talk about things we could change in his plan, and like we would all come in the same room, and everything would disappear. Like, I couldn't think of anything he did wrong or any bad behavior or any, you know. So it was very important to have everything written down, and we could focus on what the reality of the situation was instead of just making everything, you know, everything turn out great without really addressing what the problems were. I mean, it's good to focus on solutions, but you can't really arrive at solutions without addressing what the problems are. And that seemed to be like a thing that happened all the time. Whenever we got together as a team, it was just, oh, he's doing great, he's doing great. Well, then why are we meeting? You know, but it was always because he wasn't doing so great. So it's very important, again, to have this here and be able to refer to information. I'm going to pass over to Matt because I'm nervous.
All right. Again, I'm Matt Tatera. I'm a youth advocate in the county leadership team in Erie County. 23 years old. I'm still receiving many services, but I guess I'll give 2 perspectives, one as an advocate and one as a consumer. So basically, as an advocate, there needs to be like a merging of data that can help improve efficiency and back up my claims of this needs fixing. You know, if I have a problem, it helps that this has easy to understand, simple display of data that will help make my point and help improve the systems, because it's an integrated data platform. So with systems of care, it obviously goes with our vision of having all the systems talk to each other. So it allows for that. And as a consumer, it's a very scalable, the different dashboards can be in totally different like perspectives. So you can have a large view, which would be useful at the administrative point, and down as a consumer, eventually, as it's a work in progress, I hope to have it in the sense of how medical records are handled now, and that you can access them yourself and that kind of thing. Because even recently, I came up with many examples, one of which is very recent, that I had review for SSI disability, and they wanted a lot of my medical history with regard to my schizoaffective disorder. And even as a someone without mental illness, sometimes it's hard to keep your records straight. And me, as someone with this disorder, it's definitely hard. So this would have helped a lot if I had access to it. So my point here is that I want to push this as much as I can in my perspective. Let's see what else. That's about it for now. Pass it off to Brian and Dan, who are more technical about it, and here they are.
Thank you, Matt. Mentioned before, my name's Brian Nottingham. I came to the Office of Children and Youth almost 3 years ago, and when I was hired, the leadership team knew that they needed somebody to look at outcomes. That was sort of the buzzword, outcomes, provider performance. And they didn't really know what to do with me. So they hired me. They knew that something was necessary, but not sure how to go about it. So one of the first things that I discovered, my background, like I said, is in research. I was in academia for almost a decade. Was that we have lots and lots of data. We're data rich, but we're information poor. We have data spread all over the agency in individual people's, spreadsheets on their desktop, in filing cabinets. Nothing was centralized. So when we start talking about trying to evaluate, performance of providers or internal performance of caseworkers, or just trying to figure out what works and what doesn't for our clients, we could never really get a complete picture. So we had to get all of this information in some sort of centralized location where we could use control variables and things of that ilk to make sure that the relationships that we're detecting are actually there and not some artifact of missing data. So that was one of the first things that we had to dig into, and of course that took a lot of my first year just trying to get the OCY data in some sort of usable format. And then, very soon after that, we started running into other problems where, again, to get a complete picture of a client, you really need to know what sort of mental health services they've received. Have mom and dad been receiving drug and alcohol services? Has the youth been receiving drug and alcohol services? And again, so now we're talking different agencies, siloing of information. So one of the most important things that I feel like this group has accomplished just by being formed is trying to knock down some of these walls, trying to share some of this information and make sure everybody has a more complete picture of what's going on. So with all of these problems, it was really, at that point, it was almost impossible to provide the decision makers with the type of empirical evidence that they wanted. Now, of course, the first thing I was tasked with was provider performance. That's really what's taken up a lot of my time now. But nonetheless, it just wasn't there. So our decision makers were missing the ability to use sophisticated statistical analyses to help inform their decisions. So that was something we wanted to address right off the bat. Now, this sort of speaks to what end? What's our vision? What's the point of this? Well, these guys have all talked about different aspects of it, but from my point of view, this was my responsibility. The empirical evidence, the big metadata to be able to do something to provide our decision makers with something else. In addition to that, and these guys can talk a little bit more about it, in addition to the parents aspect and the clients aspect, there's really a lack of real-time information for our frontline workers. Some of that was due to our internal processes, which have been cleaned up a little bit. But others was again, the information was spread all over the place. We were duplicating services, and sometimes nobody knew what was going on. And whenever we send parents through there, and sometimes the philosophy was, let's just throw enough at them and something will stick. They're repeating services over and over and over again. It's inefficient. It's unfair to them. It's ineffective. So that was another one of the heady goals, I guess, of this group, to be able to provide frontline workers with real-time information on the programs and services our clients have received. And that speaks, of course, to the inefficiency of service delivery. Not all programs are the same, but there's some overlap between mental health and Office of Children and Youth and Drug and Alcohol. Very similar programs. And without communicating with each other, we could potentially send a client to the same program 3 times. So that was a problem. Still is. I'm not saying, like Dave mentioned at the beginning, we're at first base. We haven't solved all of this yet, but at least we've recognized that we're moving forward in a way that hopefully can address them. So, other than those were the big broad strokes. The other things we had to do was sort of clean up some of our provider performance expectations. We contract with an independent research institute in Erie County, but they are severely limited in the information they can have due to confidentiality requirements and things of that nature. So we had to go through with our providers and we redid all their contracts, we reevaluated their programs, redid their work statements, and built them around logic models. Not because of what was in place before was bad, it was a start. They were tracking things like improvement in Casey Life Skills assessments, or tracking things like improvement in NICFAS evaluations, things of that nature, which are important, but those are short term. Those are not outcomes per se. And getting the providers to sort of understand that and move beyond the simple sort of processes, which again, like I said, are important, and they're waypoints along the way to ultimate success. But from a child welfare perspective, of course, we're interested with things like we want to end recidivism. We want permanency for these children. We want to break the generational cycle of involvement in child welfare. All of these things need to be tracked not in months, but in years, and sometimes 10, 15, 20 years down the line. So for some of our programs, getting the providers to understand that because one of their workers fills out a NICFAS evaluation and it goes up, that's not the end of it. That's not success. That's really not an outcome. So we had to, of course, go through that process, and I'm happy to say we're done because it's sort of a field of my area of expertise, but we did go through all of them, and we've got them all done now, so we're ready for the most part. There's a few stragglers. But we've got them done, and we're moving forward. And in those logic models, of course, we defined what was expected, defined the variables, how they were going to be measured, and clearly defined what the outcomes were going to be. The collection protocols have been beefed up as well. For example, with the independent living program, now we receive not only that the child was involved, but we have them tracking things like who was involved in the meetings in 15-minute units. Now, they grumbled a little bit at first, but before long, they realized this just replaced their case notes. They got used to it. It became a second way of doing business. We know what they worked on domains, how much time they spent, who was involved, where did the contact take place. All of these things are, of course, variables which could impact the likelihood for success that just weren't being captured before. So we have become much more sophisticated in the type of information we've been able to collect. Now, of course, getting the data and getting them to do it is one thing, but we try to be as friendly as we can to our providers, so we accept pretty much whatever system they give it to us in, whether it be Excel or an Access format or something of that nature. And then, once we get it, it gets handed off to my partner here, to my right, for the data cleaning.
Well, one of the big problems that we have, at least in Erie County, is that we get data from so many different sources, and not one of them is universal, even amongst mental health. Base-funded services and health choices-funded services have different codes, different MCIs and master client indexes, different everything. So our job is to take all the different services and unify them into one consistent across-the-board format. Our goal ultimately is to create an integrated database. And by doing that, it'll make everybody get on the same page. For people like Madam Julie's, don't have to tell her the story over and over and over again. For providers to look at it and for us to dispense empirical evidence so that way we can find which providers are doing their jobs up to par and which ones we may need to make some changes come contract time. I'm sorry that I had to talk shortly, but we are rushed for time, so.
We go from after he gets done with those and gets those cleaned up, of course, then Dan is really sort of the glue that holds it together. He gets everything clean, and then he provides it to Shelby, which he's going to speak about what he does with it. But then ultimately, then he comes back to me for the high-level empirical analysis, which is awesome. We really couldn't do it without Dan.
Thanks. So, like we said, we've been using iDashboards for almost 2 years now. It will be 2 years in August. What the process was before we got the software, we were doing a lot of manual work. Every time we did analysis, we were using Access and Excel. And what was really tough was that inevitably, when you do some sort of study, you'll have a small change. You might want to change the variables a little bit or look at it just a little bit differently. And in many cases, it would involve kind of starting over. So we felt like we were wasting a lot of time with this manual sort of work. So we started looking for some software solutions. We looked at a few different packages, and the one that we ended up deciding on is called iDashboards. Really what it is just a front-end piece of software that connects directly to our database, and it's real-time in the sense that as soon as any new data is imported into our database, the iDashboards automatically update themselves without any additional work. So that's been a nice feature. So what I'll do now is log in. Over the 2 years, we've made I think it's close to 40 dashboards now. And what we've found is that just kind of naturally, we've gone from broader, more high-level dashboards, and we've gradually gotten more specific. And a lot of that's just been because, over time we've gotten more comfortable with the software and learned how to use it more. And another thing is just, a matter of necessity. As time goes on, people ask for new studies, and then when we see what we can do, we tend to take it a step further. So I'll log in right now. And what we're going to show you today is two different dashboards, and I'm actually going to show you the very first one we made, and then the second one that I'll show you is the most recent one we've been working on, which is the integrated database. So this first one we made, this was just a lifesaver for me because it allowed me to supply the kind of information that I was being asked for very regularly, much faster. So you'll see when this opens, you have some options to select the parameters here. This first drop down is the funding source, so we can select base for base funded services, health choices for health choices only, or if we leave that blank, it selects all. Next, we can define an age range for the client, a minimum and a maximum age. By default, I just leave this at 0 to 120 just to make sure I'm capturing everyone, but we can narrow that down if we want. Next, we can select a provider. This drop-down menu is just populated automatically by all the providers that appear in our data. Again, we can select one or leave it blank to select all. And then finally, we can select a specific service. Since this was our first dashboard and it was marrying the mental health base and the health choices data, what we see in here are both mental health and drug and alcohol services. So since these are alphabetical, we have all our drug and alcohol services first and then all our MH services. And again, we can leave that blank. So if we would just leave these parameters like this, really, this is going to show us all the services for all our clients across both funding streams. And so you'll see this is kind of split into three different areas. At the top here, this column chart with the orange columns, this is dealing with the cost of the services. It starts out being broken down by fiscal year, so you can see our data goes back to fiscal year 2007, 2008, and it goes through the current fiscal year, which is 13-14, and we can see that in total we've been a little over 70 million per year. Any of these we can drill down. If we click any of those columns, we drill down to the fiscal quarter, and we can drill down even further to the month if we wanted to. So very quickly, we can see right now for all of our services, we're between 6 and 7 million per month. At the bottom here, this is kind of the same idea, but instead of cost, we're looking at unduplicated clients, which is a measurement that we use a lot in the office, both in our internal discussions and for external reports that we do. So you can see that we're serving, for last year, for example, just under 20,000 clients. Again, we can drill down to fiscal quarter or to the month. And then finally, in the upper right here, this is kind of neat. And this was one of the things that really sold us on this software compared to competitive packages, was the built-in map functionality. So with this software, there are built-in maps by both the state and the county level. So what we can do is down at the bottom, we can select a specific quarter. And what this will show us is that it will show us the cost of the services that we defined by county. As we would expect, the vast majority of it is being spent in Erie. It's just under 15 million. But what is interesting is how much Erie County residents are also served across the state. Most of these aren't high amounts, but there are Erie County residents being served in other counties as well. So this is kind of interesting. And one of the things we've done recently too, just within the last few weeks, was we developed our own zip code map of Erie, which has proved even more useful because being a county office, looking at things at this sort of level is only so useful. So that was the first dashboard we did. Not really complicated, but it was a good start and did save us a lot of time. So next I'll open up this integrated dashboard. Now usually when you would open this, you would get one box that would pop up that would just ask for an MCI number, which is the Master Client Index. That has turned out to be the number that we've used when looking at multiple databases. Things like Social Security number haven't worked so well because in some of the data sources there is no Social Security number provided. In others, some clients have it and some don't. So it's the MCI has turned out to be the most reliable. So like I said, you would get this box that you could input that number to select a client. In this case today, we just decided to set the dashboard up so it automatically chooses a particular client just for confidentiality reasons. So I'll open that now. So this is all information for a single client. In the upper left here, usually you would see the client's name. We've redacted that. To the right, we just have some basic demographic information, the date of birth, the gender, the race, and the primary language. In the middle, this table here, this is just a chronological listing from most recent to oldest of all this client's contacts in the various systems. Mental health, drug and alcohol, early intervention, Office of Children and Youth. And when we were setting this up, we weren't quite sure who our audience was. We found, of course, that your audience will really determine what kind of information you put on a various dashboard. So just as a start, we were trying to think of this maybe from a caseworker's perspective. If you were a caseworker and you had a new child or client, what would you want to see very quickly all in one screen? So we thought it would be good to be able to see a quick history of all those claims. Each line has a start date and an end date. It lists the system, what the service was, and also to the right what that provider was. So then we get a little more specific for each of these systems. We wanted to get a little more specific, but not really get too bogged down in details for this type of a dashboard. So right here, you'll see there's a section for mental health. On the left, we have a table that shows what was the client's most recent mental health activity. We can see that for this particular client, it was on June 2nd of this year. It was outpatient at Stairways Behavioral Health, and we can see that the diagnosis attached to that visit was major depressive disorder. To the right, we have a small column chart. This shows the last 3 fiscal years, 11-12, 12-13, and 13-14, and how much, what the cost was of those mental health services for those 3 years. So we can see for this client, they only had $650 in 11-12. That went up to $5,700 last year, and this year they're at $3,900. Below that, we have a section for drug and alcohol, and this follows the same format. We see that their latest drug and alcohol activity was in November of last year, and that was outpatient at Pyramid Healthcare, and that was for alcohol abuse. And we can see in the column chart here, they had no drug and alcohol services in 11-12 or 12-13, and even this year it was only $81. So we could probably assume that they've had 1 or 2 of those outpatient visits. Below that, we have a section for early intervention. For this particular client, there's no data available, which is good. That makes sense. This is a service for children 0 to 3, and since we can see the date of birth is 1996, we wouldn't expect to see any information there. If we're looking up a client that had early intervention data, it would follow the same format as the ones above. You would see their most recent activity as well as the cost. Moving over to the right here, we have a section for the Office of Children and Youth. We had to approach this a little bit differently. The main reason was that whereas mental health, drug and alcohol, and early intervention all have dollar amounts attached with that data, the children and youth data that we've been working with so far does not. So we talked to some people and just tried to think of a fast, easy way of looking at this that would be useful. So on the left here, we see the last 5 OCY contacts, and by that we mean internal contacts with our office. So that could be an intake appointment, an ongoing appointment, or a placement. So we can see that this child, or this client, had an intake appointment in 2011, an ongoing appointment, and then an ongoing and an intake again in April of 2012. To the right, we see the last 5 provider contacts, and by that we mean external providers in the community. And we can see this client has received independent living at Bethesda in October and November of 2013. Next, we have pharmacy data. So on the left here, we have a column chart, again showing the last 3 fiscal years. For each of these fiscal years, we have two columns. The taller, lighter purple column to the left is the total number of prescriptions that were filled, and then the shorter purple bar is how many of those prescriptions were for psychotropic drugs. So for example, we can see so far this fiscal year, this client has filled 29 prescriptions, and 27 of those were for psychotropic medications. To the right, we can see what the most recent psychotropic prescription was, and we can see that that was filled on June 2nd, and that was for aripiprazole, and we can also see the prescriber and the pharmacy. Finally, at the bottom, we have a section for eligibility, and this is health choices eligibility. Here, we just wanted a quick, easy way. At a glance, you could see if the client is currently health choices eligible. So this box will just say yes or no. And then to the right, this shows a history of their eligibility. We see the start and end dates, and also what financial category they've fallen into. So, like we said, this is just the beginning. Really, we were happy just to see that it could be done, because it was something that we had been thinking about for a couple years. Now that we are comfortable with the software, and we know that this is technically possible, really we feel like from our point, it seems like the sky's the limit. What will be the challenge in the future isn't so much the technical side of it, but it'll be reaching out to those other systems and collaborating, and getting that data and cleaning it and that sort of thing. So I'm going to pass it back to Dave. Thank you.
And we have the last slide.
Sure.
Just want to touch on, in conclusion, and what our vision is from each of our perspectives. You've heard that kind of woven in a little bit as to where the premise of what we shared earlier, but I want to repeat, what the various aspects of the vision. Before I do that, while Shelby's bringing that up, I do want to stress that although we've mentioned this being available to consumers, it is not at this point in time. I fortunately, for example, can go on to my year-old PCP provider who's employed by the University of Pittsburgh Medical Center, and enter my secret password and see the chronology of my PCP visits every 6 months, and what medications and what's been ordered and so forth. That is the same vision that we have for consumers of mental health services, drug and alcohol, and so forth with this. That is definitely 2 to 3 years down the road until we get to that level of security. And this is web-based, but I hope it's sooner than that. But I've been told not to refer to how long I've been in the system working, but, right, Julie? But I just think that's not something we're going to get to tomorrow. I'm thinking that's more like third base out there. Another reference has been made to frontline child welfare caseworkers. We only have some of the child welfare data in there, and I recognize there would be value in that too, but when there are 65 frontline caseworkers ongoing, frontline caseworkers and intake and ongoing services in child welfare, there needs to be some planfulness. You need to find the person power to artfully, share, train them and their supervisors and their administrators with the use of this, and that's out there. Maybe that's second base, and so forth. At this point, so I just want to stress that yesterday. It was a little confusing, I think, to some of the audience members, where we're at with that, but we're not at that point. It's really like, at this point, an administrative tool, planning tool, and so forth. We're going to ask Julie and Matt if they would kind of speak to what they would see the vision as. Maybe I've robbed their thunder, but Julie only gave you a tip of the iceberg as to the records that she kept. And I'd like to hear her chat about that a little bit more and how vision here.
Yeah, I've got my dashboards right here. Like, I literally, this could be the center column here. This with many papers and papers of all the services and every intervention and everything that's happening in my child's life. And this would be the other side. This is the pharmacy section. It's like, thank God it's only mental health and pharmacy though. With my son, there's no OCY or DNA involvement. But yeah, I just, it's really an answer to a prayer to have something like this as a tool for those of us who are really struggling to keep things straight and in order when it's chaos every single day. I mean, there's got to be something we can hold on to that puts things in order when everything's disordered. So I'm just so thankful that this is happening, and I do see things in the future that we can grow and expand on this idea. I mean, there's just so many things we could do, of course, add blood work to it. We could add, like an ICE emergency contact person and information, and we could have, like a separate space available for, friends, family, loved ones to offer information about, someone, an incident, an adverse incident, something that may have happened that they don't want to talk about, or corrections. There might be errors in the information, just, a place where the consumer, him or herself, or a loved one could say, this isn't really how it happened. I don't recall it that way, and maybe offer some information, just like as a private little section there, and just a space for the interface to be back and forth, and there to be open communication and cooperation with the providers and all the agencies involved in those services, and possibly the records that someone kept themselves, and that if they don't match up, you should be able to talk about that. So I see a lot of future positive things happening with this. It's beautiful.
The biggest thing I see as an obstacle to getting this rolling beyond what it is right now is, as said before, confidentiality and getting everyone at the table. So I view these services as just as legitimate and important as health services in general. So my job is to advocate for the use of this in a way that would equate to a health dashboard or something of that nature. So right now it's good on its own, even to help our administration and improve efficiency, because that improves our lives just right now even. But it can be so much more if we bring the right attitude to our services to allow access to consumers and caseworkers. So that's just my vision for it. And it might take a while to get there, but it's definitely proof of concept. So
Let me just blow through these last four real quick. I want to make sure we have plenty of time for questions and answers. So the last sort of four things are kind of related. So I'll talk about them, like I said, very briefly. We'd really like to see formalized integration of the human services data, which we're getting to, and analysis. To be honest with you, I don't know if this is a popular opinion, but I would like very much for us to be working on this full time. Like to see our department sort of merge, but these guys are relied upon for a lot of things in addition to this. So at this point, it's really been kind of, as we have time, we've made progress. I think it's worthy of 3 full-time positions, but that's not a conversation for here. It's a political type thing. So that would be the next step in my mind. And then we're moving towards outcomes-based performance reviews, which we have done in Office of Children and Youth. We have, I hate to use the term, but we've killed 3 programs in the last 2 years based on empirical analysis, and you know, there were other problems as well. It wasn't like it was a bolt from the blue, but nonetheless, we were able to empirically show that programs either are not making a difference or they're not doing what they say they do. And with the right control variables and have everything accounted for, it's pretty powerful. It's tough for a provider to argue against it, which is an important thing. Of course, we partner with them. We want everything to work well, so it's never that we just come in and say, okay, it's terrible, you're done. We always give them a chance to rehabilitate. We acknowledge our weaknesses, things we've done wrong, and try to fix it. And if that doesn't happen, it's time to move on. So with the outcome-based performance reviews leads to incentivized contracting, which of course is another big long-term goal. We should reward good performance and punish performance that doesn't quite measure up. And also it leads to provider versus provider comparisons. For example, in the Office of Children and Youth, we have multiple providers providing independent living services. We have a revamped family preservation program now that we have multiple providers delivering. We have family support daycare, multiple providers delivering. So this type of analysis makes it very, very easy to really measure one provider against another. And you know, I'm a big fan of competition, so I think it's a good thing. But so that's it in a nutshell.
Well, why don't we open it to some questions? You were excited to start answering, so I'd love to hear it. Love to hear your questions.
Do you have behavioral data? Like, so any providers that are collecting any specific behavioral, I know you had mentioned that, but like to be able to show and then graph progress on goals and, you know, so do you have any of that, or is that?
Yes, we do from, well, again, I can only speak from the Office of Children and Youth, but for example, the independent living data, we have Casey life skills assessments that are plugged in there, and we have domains. So all of their activity that they spend with these youths is categorized in one of the domains that matches up with the Casey life skills assessment. So one of the things we're able to do right off the bat with short-term improvement is here's the original Casey life skills assessment, here's the domains, the amount of time, face-to-face, all this stuff that you've worked on, and here's the outcome, here's the impact.
So is that quarterly generally?
No, I get that every month from them. They submit it monthly to us, and then it ends up, like I said, on Dan's desk, who he formats it, cleans it, and puts it in there in the way we need it. So.
Yeah, and it's as close to real time as they can get, which obviously there's lag in different areas, but the goal is to get things as they come rather than like do it, once a year kind of thing.
Right.
Making sure it's up to par.
Yeah.
Every
So you guys are working
contract,
towards that.
every contract we've redone in OCY has required monthly submission of data, down from quarterly. So we are really trying to push this up. Yeah.
The faster there's a turnaround, the easier it is for us to see if there was a problem.
Right on.
If we're doing it yearly, then, you know, your lackadaisical effort could be taking years to find out. Anybody else have any other questions?
How real time is your pharmacy data?
We get pharmacy data weekly, well, on average. Yes, we get it from about 4 or 5 different sources. We have 4 big hospital pharmacy places, and we get state data. So we get that pretty regularly.
You get more than just physical health choices data of pharmacy?
The pharmacy data, we get it from the behavioral health MCOs, and that, the way we understand it is pharmacy data for anyone who's eligible for medical assistance.
Yes. Yes.
Did you have any issues surrounding like the confidentiality of the drug and alcohol data? I know you listed any caseworker could look it up.
Right. Well, we have, those are issues that we've talked about internally, and we have to hash them out before it goes live for caseworkers, but at this point, it's a very limited number of people that actually have access to this. But that is something we'll have to work out, and the other thing we're worried about too, which we're sensitive to, we've discussed, is the expungement of data, especially from the children and youth files after a certain amount of time, whatever that is, 5-7 years, which we have not approached yet. We only have the last 2, but we are aware, and we have, so that is going to have to be something we have to be concerned with for sure.
Anybody else? Yes.
How many other counties are doing something similar to what you're trying to do here?
It's a great question.
Great question.
We
I
hope a lot after this.
Yeah, we're hoping more after this week.
I pray that it's 67, but
It's not.
It's not.
I'm very cynical, but if the number of counties is X, and after this presentation, it becomes X plus 1, then we've done our job to say this is a great way to step forward. Yes, ma'am.
I can just answer that briefly. There are a few counties that are doing various kinds of integrated data systems. From those that I know, I don't believe that there are any that have the sort of long-range plan that you all do, which is part of why we wanted to showcase you here. And I think one of the intriguing pieces of what you've done, which is why I asked the question, was the pharmacy. There are some county programs that are having difficulty just the physical health, behavioral health connect around those data pieces. So you've figured out how to make it happen.
The pharmacy data was a long haul, to be honest. I mean, we had been receiving it all along, but never did anything with it. And it was hard to find information on it, even layouts to see what the data meant. That was probably a 3 or 4 month process, just getting that
Finding
in there.
out what pieces go together, but I think that ties back to the whole, we have all this data, we're sitting on a treasure trove of data, but it's useless unless you know what to do with it.
Yeah, and the part that I see this type of software working is because there is the base that they have to come up with. And there's a technical aspect, but once the base is there, it's a lot easier to bring out the information from the data, because it's the start that's the longest haul, and now that you have the potential, it's the logistical, like making sure you keep the data or that it's available to the right people is the part that I am most concerned with.
The other thing too is if you're trying to get started, of course we're very happy with iDashboards, but you don't necessarily have to have it. This is not an endorsement of that product per se. You can use Access, Excel, pivot tables. There's a million ways that are much less costly if you want to get rolling on something like this.
And really, like we said, iDashboards is really just the front end. Most of the work per se that's being done is just in SQL Server, which is pretty common software. Really, the dashboards is just displaying that.
Right.
Making it cleaner.
Makes it look pretty in the end. So
What was your question?
Me?
Yes.
I know, I'm like,
No.
have
Okay.
you, and I probably already know the answer, have you had any conversations with education in terms of databases and I know they're,
Well, the early intervention.
One area we have gotten into a lot is with SAP, the Student Assistance Program. I know we have two providers that provide that service, and they do, I believe it's quarterly state reports. So we've kind of tried to use that as a starting point, and we're actually talking to both of them right now. We'd like to use that quarterly report and kind of get that in a format, whether it's some sort of electronic form or maybe something web-based. I'm not sure what is the best approach yet, but something that not only would that generate those forms for them and cut down on their work, but would also give us some data, and that's something we've been thinking about for a couple of years now, and that's been hard to get buy-in because a lot of the SAP liaisons are just afraid of added work, which is understandable. So we kind of need to convince them that this wouldn't necessarily be more work, just different.
We do, at the individual level, I will say for the children in the Office of Children and Youth that we're serving, that anytime they're in an after-school program, as part of the last round of the logic models and updating their contracts, improvement in grades is always in there. So the provider provides us grades and attendance, and we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 after-school programs. Juvenile probation uses some truancy prevention programs. So that's kind of a backdoor way that we are getting grades and attendance for not all of them, but the ones that we serve anyhow. And they will end up in this server.
Anybody else have a question? Yes.
Personally, I'm very grateful that you have been here today and selected to be showcased. They don't have system of care in the county that I'm in at all, and I'm trying to get it there. But are you open to talking to people from another county and having them come to you or you go to your county about what you've
Definitely.
done?
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
So with your
Unfortunately-
contact information? to
Fortunately,
speak with?
today's presentation is being taped, and I think, so I'm sure Pat Cambria would be at least one person, or Ellen, to be able to access this
Thank you.
videotape. We've done a conference call with, I think, Lehigh County a couple months ago about where we're at. And conference calls are so much easier. We have, video link up as well if you have that. We can do that as well.
Do they have, is our contact information somewhere on there?
Yes, it's on the one-pagers that they have in front of them.
I
Yep.
do
So
believe
we can
that
set that up in individual.
in the packets, there is contact information if
Emails are-
after
Yeah,
the
emails
tape you
are
wanted to
fine.
go into
That's
further
fine.
detail. I'm always open for answering
Yeah,
questions.
we could start with the
whatnot.
email and then go from there.
Thank you.
Specifically for the data platform, it would be them, and Dave would be better to contact for system of care type stuff. And I don't know if my
Aren't you
stuff's
here,
on
Matt?
there. I'm kind of just going with the flow, so you can email me about, just general things, but for the technical or meeting type stuff, you would want to go to them. So
Thank you.
I'm just making sure we're on the same page.
He doesn't want a whole bunch
It's
of
like,
phone calls.
no, well, I know, I figured you would know that, but I was just putting it out there.
Another more personal question. I'm a parent, and my youth is now 30 years old and has relocated permanently to Erie County. So is there anything for him at this point for you?
Do you mean something that he could log into, or do we have data about him?
No, I don't need data. I need something to help him. Service type thing. What would you recommend?
The starting point is Erie County Care Management
Okay,
is
that number.
814-528-0600.
I'll do my phone.
Yeah, and I'm afraid that's the place to start.
Right.
There, as a 30-year-old young man with some level of mental illness,
Cognitive disabilities.
The Erie County Care Management would be the starting
That's like the
place.
switchboard, yeah.
Okay.
They'll direct you
Yeah.
where you need to go.
They
And
didn't
there
respond
are,
to my calls.
by the way,
They what?
They didn't answer my calls. Repeated.
well, you know what? I'll link you up with a woman who was here. She was in yesterday's presentation, Lacey Thompson. She's with the High Fidelity Wraparound Program, and although that's a younger age group, she rubs shoulders with persons who should be returning those calls every day.
Mhm.
Right on.
Thank you.
So,
Her name is Lacey.
Lacey Thompson. And you have my number, my email right there, but I'll see you after this presentation.
Thank you.
Yes.
Like a
Yeah.
coach.
People, sorry for the delay.
Sorry.
Anything else? Great, thank you very much.
Okay,
Thanks for
thanks.
coming.
Thank you very much. Have a great day. and-
I want to thank the panel and thank all of you for coming, and just a reminder, if you could fill